Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of the Scratch a Track podcast presented by the Dude and Grimm Show. I am the Dude.
And I'm Grimm. And today we are going to be discussing the 2020 revision of Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time.
Ooh, yes. But before we get into it, everyone, please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below because that would really help us out. We're trying to do our thing here, so
Absolutely.
Give us a like.
Yeah,
Give us a
please.
subscribe. Comment. But, so Grimm, top 500 albums of all time.
It's a
by
big list,
Rolling
dude.
Stone. This is their third, I guess, iteration you could say of the list. I think the first one was 2002. I think it ended up coming out in 2003. So we'll just say 2002, 2003-ish.
And then 12?
they updated in 2012.
Okay.
So, and you know, we've discussed this a little bit. It's interesting how it was compiled, and I haven't seen like a full list of everyone that was kind of consulted on this, but we do have some names, especially for the ones that was in 2020. But essentially what they did is they took some critics, people in the music industry and musicians as well, and kind of polled everyone, I believe, on their top 50 albums that they had.
Was it 300 people they did total, or 30, or I
don't know. I think it's been an up and down number. I don't think there's like an exact number.
Okay.
I believe for 2020 it was over 300.
Okay. That's a pretty big spectrum. So
it
you got to give them that. And I think one thing that these things are going to be tough, right? Because you're never going to feel like you really agree with the list unless you made the list yourself, which no shit, they didn't ask us, right? I mean, so not yet.
Dude, next year. Well,
next time.
In 8 years. In 8 years. Yeah.
But
Volume 4.
I think that there's music has just evolved so much that it's kind of tough because there's different album types, which we'll get into, and there's so many different genres of music now, and there's so many things that have gained maybe relevance that people may not have thought of as relevant before. So I think we both had to kind of have a moment where we realized that this is very subjective and it has to be taken with a grain of salt. And, you know, just like with anyone, our opinions are merely that, just our opinions.
Sure. And I think one of the things I struggle with when I'm like making these lists, or people ask me, oh, what's your favorite album, or what's the best album? To me, those are two different things. Like I could do what I think are my top 10 favorite albums versus what I think the top 10 best albums are. And those are two completely different lists.
You're very right, because, what you might say is like, not necessarily my favorite, but the greatest album. There's so many elements that going into that. Like there's has it stood the test of time? Significance, historical significance as to when it was released, and is it still relevant in that same sort of framework now? So there's a lot to it. There really is. And I'm sure that this was no easy task to compile. So I'm not going to sit here and attack those who did it, because I mean, far be it for me to think that I could produce a list that people would agree with that. So
yeah, I mean, dude, I could create a list, and 2 days later I could be fighting with myself on why I chose that. So I mean, it's pretty
I'm
much.
I'm surprised we didn't fight with each other. This almost could have been the end of the Dude and Grimm Show, theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty much the end of 2020. Thank God. This is our last Monday episode we're doing, but. So we figured this would be a good way to kind of end the year. And again, I feel like you do have to take these lists with a grain of salt and look at it more in a fun kind of perspective. They definitely, there's some, let's just say right off the bat, if people have looked at the 2002, 2003 list, the 2012 list, and then this one, significant changes.
Yes,
like significant,
absolutely.
Where the first two lists, two times they did it, were very, very similar, very, very similar. And that was one of the complaints too. It definitely was weighted more towards basically the white male rockers. That's what was really weighted towards.
Yeah, and if you're really going to go for a 500 of all time, I mean, you really got to think about a lot more than just that. And then just rock music, than just, I mean, it's like I said, no easy task for those who put it together. So
absolutely,
you know, I don't envy them in any way. But with that said, I mean, I think we've kind of covered the thoughts on how it was compiled and where we're at. One thing I don't know that we touched on as much is, I know that we talked about album types, because in our estimation, what makes an album is a work that is put out by an artist, and I know that in the list they use some compilations, which I think that's completely fair. And in some cases, I think I'm okay with like them using a greatest hits, because I know there were periods in music where people weren't necessarily making albums, and a lot of artists rather, I think, got pressure not necessarily to make albums, but to make singles. So for artists like that, I get why it would have to be a greatest hits, because they didn't get the chance, or maybe it just wasn't what they did to make an album, so to speak.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you're always going to find certain exceptions to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the thing with the whole greatest hits, debate is, there's a lot of greatest hits out there. I mean, you had the Blue and Red album from the Beatles. I know one of our favorite greatest hits growing up was the double disc Doors.
Great one,
dude. Like if that one was considered, like, for me, that'd be top 10. That's just me.
Oh yeah, that was excellent. I mean, that was like junior high, like,
dude.
Until I think in college, you really got me starting to dig into one by one.
Albums.
The albums, yeah.
Yeah, Soft Parade, yeah. So anyways, there are those things, and also it should be noted that some live albums made this as well. And I have sort of mixed feelings about that. I mean, I think it's cool that there's a live performance, but I guess in that it was recorded and put out, and a lot of people bought it, and sure, that's great. One of them that comes to mind is their Nirvana Unplugged show, which is on this list, and.
Yeah.
To me, the idea of an album, though, is like, okay, there's a group going into the studio at sort of a specific period of time and creating this work and putting it out as a whole. Now that's very sacred. Like,
I do understand your point there, but I think what you said in regards to live albums should be considered, because one thing that comes to my mind is Johnny Cash live at Folsom Prison. And you got a guy who at that point is maybe not at the best stage in his career, but and he went and did that against the wishes of his record company. But they recorded it anyways. So he goes into a prison, dude, and the audience security participation is like palpable, because for those guys, I mean, to have like Johnny Cash come into a prison and want to record, and then he parades his hot little wife, June Carter. I mean, like, some of those guys may not have seen a woman in a long time, like that whole scene. If you can just imagine, that whole scene had to be something else. And that's why, like, I hear you on the live albums. But again, like you said, there's always an exception. And I think that album, which did make the list, should be considered that. And that album actually ended up really like revitalizing his career at that moment. Sure.
Absolutely.
So it's as important as any album he could have put out otherwise.
Yeah, it is hard, again, with a list like this, to have everything be so black and white. I think there is some gray area and stuff. Having said all of this, Grimm,
and it was a lot.
It was a lot. We both have some issues, some things that maybe we agree with or don't agree, don't agree with, things that we would have changed. And again, this is all fun, and we would love it if you guys, not only you can agree and disagree with us, but also
I would love to hear comments, please.
But look at the list. We'll put a link below in the description. look at the list, check it out, and tell us what you guys have issues with. And if there's something missing, who's missing from the list? Who is missing? Also, it should be noted, and this is, I think, where we're going to start. There was, from the 2012 version to the 2020 version, a lot of artists and albums were removed to fit kind of newer music. So,
to be fair, not everything that was removed was even that old. I mean, if you look, there's many things from the 2000s that were taken out.
There were. But one thing, I just kind of looked at this and did a little math. So albums from the 60s actually took a huge hit. In the 2003 edition of this list, there were 126 albums from the 60s. In the 2020 version, there is now 74. So that's 52 albums from the 60s were removed from this list.
So over 10%. Also, that's a big,
yeah. In 2020, 86 of the entries are from like the 21st century. And I think 154 were not on either of the lists. So there's definitely more modern feel. And you're going to notice right away from looking at the list, in the past 20 years, the genre, I would say, that is really become prevalent and popular in our culture is rap, pop, and hip hop. It's been primarily that over more of the rock genre. And so when you look at this list, that's the immediate thing that stood out to me right away.
And I think that makes sense as music kind of ebbs and flows with what's popular and
with the times. Absolutely.
So I think to kind of go forward, we're going to talk about our top 5 issues, each of us, with the ones that were removed. And then we're going to talk about our top 5 issues with the current list. And then we want to talk about who we think is missing.
Exactly. So with number 1, the top 5 issue, that's the top 5 removals. Now that's to say that they were on a previous list and they're no longer on this list. So Grimm, I'm going to put you on the tee for this one, my friend. I don't know if you want to go through your 5 or, we can trade on and fine. Off, whatever.
I'll do that. I'm going to get out the driver and, looking at mine, I understand that the ones that I have issues with being removed would be categorized in the classic rock category. But the thing is, I'm not doing this because I think that needs to have more of a presence than anything else. It's these particular albums I think are important in the context of when they came out, what they meant, and the context of history. So with that, Jethro Tull's Aqualung. Not a fan of that being removed. I think that's an excellent album that should still be there. Dude, Paul McCartney and Wings, Band on the Run? Are you fucking serious? Like,
dude,
this one's a little more fringe, but to me, I had this vinyl. I really like this. Dude, Mott the Hoople, All the Young Dudes. Now, the title track on that, All the Young Dudes, was actually written by David Bowie, and he gave it to Mott the Hoople to record. And many people would probably know the song All the Young Dudes. Great song, but it's actually a really good album, too. Dude, the Rolling Stones' Tattoo You. I know that one thing I noticed is that the Rolling Stones' Aftermath is still on the list. And I can say that I'm sure that when Aftermath was released, it was a big deal. And there's a lot of very timely songs on there. And that is a great album, and I'm not dissing it. But, dude, Tattoo You, come on. Like, that's an awesome album. And I think for a rock band in the 80s, that's a statement because that's a real, really great. And in many ways, it goes into some psychedelic, like with Heaven and stuff. It kind of gets into some different territory for a rock band in the very early 80s. I think it's 1980 or 81 that was released.
Okay.
And then, dude, the Stooges' Raw Power. This is my biggest beef because you're going to keep the Stooges' Funhouse on the list, which I like Funhouse.
And their self-titled album, I believe, is on it as well.
I think the self-titled album should stay, but if anything, dude, trade Raw Power for Funhouse. I mean, holy shit, you wouldn't even have Punk if it wasn't for that album. I'm sorry. Like that's an awesome album. Dude, get out your driver, you're on the tee.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to speak to just two of yours real quick. I think Paul McCartney in Wings' Band on the Run could have fallen victim a little bit because there is a prevalence of Beatles albums still on this. And now I know Plastic Ono Band from John Lennon makes it, and that didn't get cut, thank God.
And Ram is still on here, which Ram.
Exactly.
If I was gonna take one, if you had to give me the two of them, I guess I'd keep Ram. But I just think Band on the Run is also just an excellent, wonderful album. But
I'd definitely keep Ram. And I think also with the Rolling Stones that they're a band that is represented, and I think
they're well
so.
represented.
So I think they probably looked at it and was like, one can kind of get chopped, or it just didn't make the cut because again. This was a poll that was like sent out to, 300 plus people and it just didn't make their list. And so it didn't make this list. But I just feel like, that could have been put on there for sure.
Dude, I think those are fair comments. But, with that, I'm going to ask you to put your ball on and get your driver out and you're on.
Well, the first one I'm going to start with is actually still in kind of the classic rock genre. And that is The Doors' LA Woman. It's other than their self-titled album, it's probably my favorite album of theirs, and we did a podcast on that album, so check it out.
But it's an excellent album.
It is, and they got real back into like their blues.
It's gritty
and just it's gritty and has two of actually it's got a couple, but you could argue two of their most popular best songs in "L.A. Woman" and "Riders on the Storm." Love and Madly, the Changeling on it.
Yeah, and the cover of Crawling King Snake. Dude, come on.
It's amazing. So I feel like that definitely could have made it. The next four are actually from the same sort of genre, and that is the I'll just the grunge rock
90s,
genre.
Alternative
90s,
grunge. Yeah.
And that would be, we have Pearl Jam's Vitalogy, Smashing Pumpkins' Melancholy, and
Dude.
How and Siamese Dream made it, so the Pumpkins are represented. But Melancholy?
I would choose Melancholy over Siamese Dream. It was so much more of a fucking statement. It just was.
And I'm not even like a crazy diehard Pumpkins fan, but man, that just stood out to me so much that wasn't on there. Soundgarden's Super Unknown, not on there. I mean,
Rubbish.
Another just classic album from that period, and Rage Against the Machine's Battle for Los Angeles. That was taken out. So these were ones that were all on there. Please remember, they were all on there before and didn't make it this time.
Now, if it were me, from a personal perspective, I would choose Evil Empire over Battle for Los Angeles.
100%.
But either way, one of those two should still be on there.
Absolutely, 100%. I definitely agree. So I think now we want to get into our list of the ones that are currently on there that we just don't feel.
Yeah.
And we, again, everybody, we're a little biased here because we are kind of classic rockers. That doesn't mean we can't appreciate, other ones, but that's just us. So go ahead, Grimm, your turn.
Harry Styles. Fine. Now I need to, in full disclosure, these albums I haven't listened to. So, you can lambaste me for that, and rightly so. But there are just some things that I listen to and I'm just like, I don't understand how this makes the top 500 of all time. So Harry Styles, fine line. Harry Styles was in a boy band called One Direction. And I just feel like if this album was that goddamn amazing that I would have heard about it aside from this list, because it's not like I'm some amazing music aficionado. Of course, we all like to think we are, but I know I'm not. But I just can't imagine that it's that good. So
it comes from our sort of time period.
Yeah. It's too new. There's tell me what happens. Like, this better be on the fucking remove list in 10 years. Anyways, Daddy Yankee, Barrio Fino. Enough said there. Britney Spears, Blackout. Britney fucking Spears? Really? Really? That's what you're gonna take off some of that other shit and put on Britney Spears, the fucking Blackout? I don't buy it. I think Kanye West is extremely overrepresented. Now, I know that our good friend Forrest, and even you, the dude, were telling me that you listened to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and it is really good. And a lot of people would say that many of his albums kind of redefined like what popular music at this time would be like. And I'll give him that. I think he's an asshole, but I'll give him that. But I just think, I don't know that he needs 6 albums on there. Like, I'm sorry, he's not the fucking Beatles.
No.
And Billie Eilish, When We Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? I know from listening to some of my friends play things and even cover a few things that Billie Eilish is talented, but again, I kind of lump that in with the Harry Styles of like, let's see where this ends up. It's hard for me to just say like, you're going to take some of that other stuff off and you're going to put Billie Eilish on there. That could be very naive of me to say. And to be fair, I do owe a lot of these a listen, but that's my first initial impression.
Yeah, well, and I'll just speak a little bit to that. I think with Billie Eilish, I think one of the things, the success story is something you can't deny. Like just how she was discovered.
Sure,
that is awesome. I mean, fuck, who wouldn't want that, right? I mean, that's it would be phenomenal.
I hear you, 100%. And she's obviously talented. I've seen her. I've seen that she plays instruments and writes her own material. So for that, I give credit and respect. I mean, but again, that furthers my argument for Britney Spears, because I'd be surprised if she could play a fucking note on anything and or writes her own music.
Yeah, and I can't say I'm overly familiar with her Blackout album, but I think with that, it was a little bit more of a comeback for her, because her previous album that she had before that was In the Zone. That was 2003. Blackout's 2007. So she was on hiatus. She was shaving her head. So this was,
I was going to say, this is after she grew her hair back. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So, hey, and you could also say that, I mean, everybody loves like a bounce back success story, give them a, second chance, that kind of stuff.
I get that.
Good
I just tend to favor people more who actually who write their own music. I'll always give them dibs over someone who is a manufactured product of pop music.
Yeah. And as far as Kanye goes, I do think he's on here 6 times. I do think that's a pretty heavy representation. And again,
dude, I top 3.
I can also make the argument that some of my favorite musicians like Neil Young, even the Beatles, are on just a little too much.
I agree. And these are some of my favorite bands of all time. And I don't know that. Let's see. As I'm looking, I don't know that the Beatles need 9 albums. I still think they're the greatest band that's ever been, but I don't know that they need 9. Yeah. I don't think Dylan needs 8. I think Blood on the Tracks is too high. I don't think Neil Young needs 7. Yeah. But anyways, we kind of digress. So you're on the team.
We did. Okay, so I'm up. So my first issue is I'm going to go with Al Green. And it's not that Al Green is on. I love Al Green. This is where, to me, the greatest hits I don't love. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because he has an album also on it called Call Me. Okay? Mm-hmm. Greatest Hits has 10 tracks. Call Me has 9. Okay, 3 of the songs that are on both. So there's just such an overlap in the songs, and I just feel like I don't love that, where it's like, okay, we're gonna put his greatest hits on there because it has some tracks that aren't on this album. That's still a really good album. It's like, are you gonna put like the Beatles Blue disc on their Blue Greatest Hits disc on there too? So I just feel like, we're doing 500 here. Having that overlap, I don't love it. I really don't. So then my next one is actually, it's going to be Pink Floyd, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. And the reason I love Pink Floyd, I appreciate the Syd Barrett era. I appreciate that, he obviously, it's been well chronicled, had his struggles with LSD and kind of lost it. And their trajectory and where they were expected to go while he was in the band and their creative force definitely, was on the rise. But that didn't happen. And I think there's some good songs on there, but there's a lot of bands who have put good albums out there or have had singles out there that have potential. There's a lot of people's girlfriends in there, right? Like there are. And so I just feel like having that album on there, I just don't, I don't need it. I don't think it does it for me. I, as a complete album, I just don't think it's there. I really don't.
Oh yeah. Like take that versus Animals, a little more of a complete album. Just saying.
Exactly. Just saying. My next one is going to be Dr. Dre's The Chronic. And it's not that it's on it. I love it. It's one of my favorite albums. And I have no issue even where it's placed. It's placed at number 37. But other albums such as Beyonce's Lemonade, D'Angelo's Voodoo, Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, Kanye's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, also all above it. And I, we can argue all day about order and where things are placed, but for me, The Chronic is just such an iconic album, and I feel like to me, it is kind of like, I feel like it did for rap what Nevermind did for grunge rock. Agreed. And because
put it on the map.
You had NWA who was around for a while. They were great, popular band. Then they kind of went off and did their own things. Ice Cube, he started a good, successful solo career. Then Dr. Dre came out with this, and it just came out at kind of the perfect time. Mm-hmm. Music videos were blowing up. The music videos for this album were there. It introduced everyone to Snoop Dogg, and so much came from this album that I just feel like I just have a hard time placing certain other albums in front of it.
For historical significance sake, right? I mean,
exactly. And you could also make the argument though, because personally I would put Sgt. Pepper ahead of Pet Sounds, even though Pet Sounds was hugely influential in
Sgt. Pepper. Yeah.
So
it's just a better album. I'm sorry.
I contradict myself there. Then I'm going to go again, placement, Dark Side of the Moon, 55 on the list.
Bullshit. And I think that's a fucking top 10. Sorry.
It just sums up ultimately like what an album is.
Dude, I'm sorry. Like, I utterly respect Joni Mitchell, but to think that her album Blue is number 3 and Dark Side is what, in the 50s?
55.
Give me a fucking break.
Yeah. Well, so with Dark Side, it embodies everything like an album is. It is the classic concept album. Songs flow into each other. Musicianship is phenomenal. The originality of it is unquestioned.
Yeah, you never heard anything like it.
And the production for the time is second to none.
Yeah. Nobody did anything that creative production wise. No. Agreed.
So then we also have, my last one is going to be Bob Marley. Again, we have Legend, which is like a greatest hits sort of compilation. And we also have...
Sorry, go on.
And we also have Exodus. Dude, 5 of the 10 songs on Exodus are on Legend. Okay, dude. We got Exodus, Jammin', Waiting in Vain, 3 Little Birds, and One Love. These albums, there's just too much overlap there. It's like pick one or the other and put something else on.
I'm sorry, dude. Legend is for white people on a cruise who like say they listen to Bob Marley. That is not for real Bob Marley. Like I don't know. I just, ever since, we really dug into Bob Marley and listened to the albums, I'm like, fuck Legend. No offense. No offense, because I love Bob Marley's music, but it's just like it's a fucking cop out, dude. Legend is a cop out.
I think it's a frustrating thing for for probably us and maybe for fans who are, dive deeper into his catalog. Because when it's just like any other band with a greatest hits. If I dive deeper into a catalog, then they're an album band for me. He's an album musician.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to put on. It's just what it is. So,
dude, I'd rather have like the Lee Scratch Perry sessions over fucking Legend on there, because I think that's actually much more important. But dude, I've been on more than one cruise in my life. I'll never go on another one, but I've been on more than one. And guess what I heard on every fucking one of them? Legend. No question.
All right. Now I think we can move on, my friend, to the top 5 missing either albums or artists or both that we just feel should have been represented here.
Yeah.
So, Grimm, I will let you tee off.
Yeah, I'm not going to go too deep into these because I know we're really
pushing time.
The clock is ticking there, dude. But dude, how did the Gorillaz not make this list? I think Plastic Beach is, as an album, it's put together phenomenally. It is a great album. It's a great work. The story behind it.
The variety of artists on it, right?
Yep. Variety of artists, a variety of music. It's fantastic. That
Snoop Dogg, made it. Bobby Womack, Lou Reed. I mean, I can keep going.
I know this is a little more fringe, but I feel that in some ways, some hip hop that's more on the outer fringes of it. Now, I will say I did like the fact that the list had number 1, Wu-Tang's Enter the 36 Chambers, and they had several of the solo albums from the members. I know that they had Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Links. Ghostface Killer was on there. Dude, Jizz's Liquid Swords is phenomenal. But not to say he's affiliated with Wu-Tang, because he's definitely not. But dude, Deltron 3030 by Del the Funky Homo Sapien is a rap album like you've never heard. And I just think that should be represented. It's like if David Bowie mixed with rap in this futuristic kind of, and I mean that in content, but it's phenomenal. How the fuck did the Flaming Lips not make it? Dude, Yoshimi battles the Pink Robots. Or if you really wanted to argue about it, you could argue the Soft Bullets. I'd take either one, but the Flaming Lips should be representative. Yeah. The Kinks were represented on the list. However, I think that the ones that they chose, dude, how would you choose what you chose over Lola versus the Power Man and the Money Go Round? For what it says about the times and the music industry and everything, like that's just a great album. I don't know how else to say it. And another kind of fringe one, but I think it is just a wonderful album that I just don't think enough people know about, but it doesn't change the fact that to me, it's one of the best albums ever made is Dr. Dog, We All Belong. And I believe that came out in 2007, which is a tough year because a lot of stuff came out in that year. But that album, I can guarantee you, is unlike anything else that came out in that year. And it should be on there because it's that good, in my opinion.
Your humble opinion.
These are all opinions.
So humble. Yes. Yeah. All right, my turn. I'm going to go with Pink Floyd Animals. I just, especially over Piper at the Gates of Dawn. I think it's one of their most underrated albums, and it came in you could say their biggest period of creativity. We had Dark Side, we had Wish You Were Here, Animals, and then The Wall. And it's like, whoa, like that's like the middle one that it's like the redheaded stepchild or something. It just didn't.
Yeah,
make it,
and I don't know why, because it's awesome.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Another one we discussed earlier a little bit was Rage Against the Machine's Evil Empire. Now their first album did make it. Battle Los Angeles was taken off of it, and this one was never on any of them. So I don't know. I don't get it.
I feel like this is the best one they ever made.
That's, again, our humble opinions. So the next one for me, not that it's really fringe, because I think they're a really popular band now, but dude, the Black Keys Brothers.
Yep.
I mean, because especially this is more of a transition album for them. Their previous work was, I think, a little more raw and gritty in stuff. And this album certainly has that on there, but it also had probably their biggest hit to date. And it kind of marked a transition. This is the album that kind of put them more in the mainstream for your casual listener.
Yeah, I agree.
And it got them to headline. They were headlining the festivals after this album, you know. So then I go with a little more indie, and I would go with Modest Mouse's Lonesome Crowded West. Check out our Scratch a Track podcast episode.
Agreed.
And again, it's more indie. It is a little more fringe, but I think it's just a phenomenal album. It has a great story. They were so young when they did it. I think they should kind of be represented there. And also going back a second to the Black Keys. I mean, I'd have to look at this list again, but is there any sort of what you call rock music from 2000 on that made this list? It really didn't. So I feel like rock isn't even represented on their top 500 modern rock. And then we talked about Gorillaz a little bit, and you mentioned Plastic Beach, which I would put on there as well. But their other album, Demon Days, I mean, dude, how does that not make it as well? I just think there's some of those oversights. I don't know, there's a part of me. It's like, gosh, you're asking over 300 people. I can't imagine, these. I know you can't put everything on there, but these ones are just kind of like sort of glaring omissions a little bit.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you. But it's all right, because I mean, Green Day's American Idiot made it, and so did Britney Spears. So what do you got? And if we had honorable mentions, I mean, I know this is real fringe, but dude, Mr. Bungle California is probably better than 80% of the albums that are on here. Just in terms I know it's
of both of our top 10s.
Oh, yeah. Dude, easy. No. And we could go on from this all day.
We could. So do you want to talk about I know we're kind of running tight on time. Do you want to talk about the top 10 real quick?
Yeah, a little bit. I do.
Just want to give me your overall thoughts on it, perhaps?
I do think that it is very eclectic, and I appreciate that.
Definitely. I agree.
Joni Mitchell's Blue coming in over the Beatles' Abbey Road. That is what I would call beyond an oversight. And again, in all fairness, I haven't dove into Blue as much as I should have, but I'm sorry. I just don't think it's better than Abbey Road. I don't. And again, that's my opinion, but,
Well, I find it interesting. So in the previous two lists, Sgt. Pepper was rated number 1 on both lists.
And now Sgt. Pepper's down.
Now Sgt. Pepper's down to 24, and even the Beatles' Abbey Road, which I would put above Sgt. Pepper myself. But I think people also put Sgt. Pepper in there for historical reasons.
And even the Dylan Blood on the Tracks. I mean, I think Dylan should definitely be represented in the top 10, but Blood on the Tracks would not have been my pick. I mean, hell, Highway 61 Revisited is at 18. I would put that a million times over before Blood on the Tracks.
Definitely. No, I'm 100% with you there. And, so Beach Boys' Pet Sounds, that's number 2. And that is one that is kind of held steady. I want to say it was
great album.
Awesome. Phenomenal album.
But to say that it's better than some of these other things,
well, there's a part of me that feels like I feel like that's kind of almost on there for a historical context as well. But if you're gonna take Sgt. Pepper down because of it, that has the historical context too. And I know one influenced the other, but still,
I would say the same thing with Nirvana Nevermind. I feel like I like that album. I mean, how could I not like that album? That was a huge album in my life. But it's not number 6. I can tell you that much. It is not number 6.
Okay.
They're just, it isn't. I mean, and with all due respect and no disrespect intended to Lauryn Hill, but the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill's number 10. I don't know. Guess I would have put Exile on Main Street before that one, but again, just me.
Definitely.
One thing that's not on this list that I think is kind of bullshit is I think it's Africa Bambaataa and Soul Sonic Force, their album called Planet Rock is, dude, many would argue, and I've heard Rick Rubin talk about it many times, is like the fucking cornerstone of hip hop music as we know it today didn't see it on the list. I think that's a big oversight. Maybe Definitely. It's a little more fringe, but dude, it's kind of like you wouldn't have what we have today if you hadn't had that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would just recommend people just go through this kind of list a little bit and look at things. And there's never going to be a perfect list because there's certain genres and certain music that you just don't like. It's just not your thing. Yeah. So, a lot of this stuff, I'm like, I don't even know who that is, or I've never heard of it. But that's why we always put our favoritism definitely, I think, overrides some of our logistical thinking maybe sometimes, but there's some where you're like, come on, right?
Oh, and dude, and I'm guilty of that. I've gotten pretty impassioned about talking about several of these, and I know that many people would disagree, and you are more than welcome to, because again, my opinion is nothing more than that, my opinion.
Well, I think we would be remiss, my friend, if we did not talk about the number one album that is on this list. And we've discussed this. What's going on, Marvin Gaye? Again, check out our podcast on that album. But
yeah,
and we've talked a little bit about this online. Now, this is one of those ones, and kind of how we started, maybe talked about this earlier in the episode, where I wouldn't put this on my top 10 favorite, but it's definitely in competition for my top 10 best of all time.
One of the most important albums ever made. I mean, without phenomenal. A doubt. I just what it said socially and what it was for him as an artist to take that kind of control. I mean, there were just a lot of factors where it is just a wonderful album. And
it is.
That's one. When I saw that, I was kind of like,
I can't argue with it, man. I can't.
That is a very important album. And I know that we were talking offline. In many ways, as important today as it was the day it was released.
Absolutely, 100%.
I mean,
it is. It's just so good, man. And it's one of those albums you can just put on and just chill to. It's very good. And yeah, I certainly can't argue with it. Again, I would lean more towards putting it on my best of versus my favorite, but those are, again, two completely different lists. And I just think I have no problem with it going number one on this list at all. I think it's great. So, what do you say, Grimm?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk forever about it because I looked through the list and I'm like, okay, I'm okay with this placement. There's so many things, but
like putting Kid AF ahead of OK Computer. That's a fun little conversation to have. I don't know.
I know.
So
I can see the logic, but
it's tough.
I do like the fact that Amy Winehouse Back to Black got represented pretty highly. That's I did want to comment on. I appreciate that, and also Talking Heads Remain in Light. Talking Heads Remain in Light got in the top 50, and I absolutely agree with that. I think that's a really fantastic album.
Sure. We got some Nas on here, more Prince, Ramones. So
Paul Simon Graceland made the top 50.
It did. And also it's in the bottom 400s, but an album that was very, very influential in the making of that. Which is called, get it?
Oh yeah,
which is 497. It's just various artists, but the indestructible beat of Soweto. Well,
and there's some compilations that I think probably should have been mentioned in here. One of them is Nigeria 70, which is kind of what it says it is. It's basically like a 1970s retrospective of African kind of pop.
Sweet.
And it's really excellent. And same thing with, there's an album I've listened to that's called A Psychedelic Guide to Cumbia, which is also quite
really
wonderful.
Nice. Yeah. Dude, Boyz II Men 2's album, it's actually, dude, I had that as a kid, man, and it's a good album. It really is. There's a lot of songs that are good on there. So anyways, everyone, we have rambled on long enough. Yeah, we could definitely talk about this forever, and we would love it if you guys
dude. I mean, I wish we had the opportunity to send you a prize because you would deserve it.
Definitely, but I would say you can still kind of stay, and that is dude, put comments below. Let us know. Yeah. Obviously, agree and disagree with us, but agree and disagree with this list. I mean, it's pretty wild. You're never going to please everybody. It's just the way of the world.
Don't get mad at us. Don't hate the player. Hate the game. You know? Exactly. Like, get mad at the list.
Yeah. Get mad at the list. Get mad at Rolling Stone. Send them a scathing email.
Yeah.
Well, okay, everyone. Thank you for hanging in there with us. Please give us a like, a subscribe, a follow, and plenty of comments. We'll be seeing you in the new year, 2020, 2021. 2020, 2021. All right, we're coming for you.
It's a new horizon.
We're coming for you. So until next time, it's time to go. The Dude and Grimm Show.
Scratch a Track is produced by the Dude and Grimm. Additional music provided by More. That's ... MORE. And the Tims, TIMNZ. Copyright 2020. The Dude and Grimm Show.